She was 8 months pregnant when she collapsed in a pool of her own blood. Her husband was supposed to be in London. He told her he was closing a $1 billion deal. He promised to call every night. But when her brother checked the GPS, Marcus Bennett was not in London. He was 20 minutes away, at another woman's apartment, while his wife was dying on their kitchen floor. What Rachel discovered next would shatter everything she believed about her marriage, her life, and the man she trusted with her future. But here is what Marcus did not expect. He thought Rachel would break. He thought she would accept whatever crumbs he offered and disappear quietly. He was wrong. Because the woman who survived that night was not the same woman who collapsed. She was stronger, smarter, and absolutely determined to destroy the man who betrayed her. This is the story of how a pregnant wife went from victim to victor. And trust me, you are not ready for the twists ahead. Value statement. Before we begin, I want you to know something important. This story is not just entertainment. It is a survival guide disguised as drama. Inside this 90-minute journey, you will learn how to recognize the signs of gaslighting before it destroys your reality. You will understand how powerful people manipulate systems to silence their victims. And most importantly, you will discover that no matter how hopeless things seem, fighting back is always possible. Every betrayal Rachel faces, every trap she falls into, every victory that gets stolen from her, contains a lesson that could save your life or the life of someone you love. So listen carefully. Take notes if you need to, because the knowledge hidden in this story is worth more than any billionaire's fortune. The 911 call crackled through the emergency dispatch center at 11:47 on a Saturday night. A woman's voice, trembling with barely contained panic, cut through the static. "My sister is 8 months pregnant. There is blood everywhere. Please, you have to send someone now." The dispatcher maintained her professional calm. "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. What is your location?" 427 Whitmore Drive in Greenwich, Connecticut. "It is the Bennett estate. Please hurry. She is not moving. Is she breathing?" A pause. The sound of someone pressing their ear close to another person's face. "Yes, barely, but there is so much blood. Oh, God, there is so much blood. Help is on the way, ma'am. Stay with her. Keep her warm if you can." The call ended, but the echoes of that desperate voice would ripple through the lives of everyone involved for years to come. Because the woman bleeding out on the pristine white marble floor of her dream home was about to discover that the life she thought she was living had been nothing but a carefully constructed lie. And her husband, the man who had promised to love and protect her until death do them part, was not in London closing a business deal. He was 20 minutes away in the arms of another woman. Just 12 hours earlier, Rachel Bennett had been the picture of happiness. At 32 years old, she had everything a woman could want. A stunning Connecticut mansion that had been featured in Architectural Digest, a husband worth over $2 billion, and a baby girl due in just 4 weeks. The nursery already painted in soft shades of pink and cream, tiny clothes folded and waiting in drawers that cost more than the car Rachel used to drive. Used to drive because Marcus had insisted she get something safer for the baby. The Tesla Model X sat in the garage now, sleek and silent, while Rachel's beloved 10-year-old Honda Civic had been donated to charity without her permission. "It is just a car," Marcus had said when she protested. "I am trying to protect our family." That was Marcus, always protecting, always providing, always knowing what was best. Rachel stood in the grand living room of their home, arranging white roses in crystal vases for the baby shower that would begin in just a few hours. 30 of her closest friends and family members would be arriving soon to celebrate the impending arrival of baby Emma. Well, Marcus's friends' wives, mostly. Rachel's actual close friends had slowly drifted away over the 3 years of her marriage. Diane was the only one who had stuck around, and even she had started making comments about how Rachel never seemed available anymore. The first contraction hit while Rachel was adjusting the placement of a gift table. She gasped, her hand flying to her swollen belly, but then she laughed it off. Braxton Hicks. She had been having false contractions for weeks now. Dr. Patterson had assured her it was completely normal, especially for first-time mothers. The second contraction came 5 minutes later, stronger this time. Rachel set down the vase she had been holding and took a deep breath. She was probably just tired. She had been on her feet all morning, refusing to let the caterers handle the decorations because she wanted everything to be perfect. Marcus would have hired someone to do all of this, of course. He had offered repeatedly, but Rachel had insisted on doing it herself. It was one of the few things in her life that still felt like hers. She pulled out her phone to text him, just to hear his voice, just to feel connected to him, even though he was thousands of miles away. "Hey, honey. Shower's coming together beautifully, missing you. Call when you can?" She stared at the screen, waiting for the 3 dots that would indicate he was typing a response. Nothing. Marcus was in London, supposedly closing a deal that would expand Bennett Technologies into European markets. He had left 3 days ago with promises to call every night, but his phone had been going straight to voicemail for the past 48 hours. Important negotiations, his assistant Jennifer had explained when Rachel called the office. He specifically asked not to be disturbed except for emergencies. The third contraction brought Rachel to her knees. This time, there was no mistaking it for Braxton Hicks. The pain radiated through her entire body like fire, stealing her breath and her ability to think. She grabbed the edge of the gift table, trying to steady herself, and that was when she looked down. Blood was pooling on the white marble floor beneath her feet. Too much blood. Rachel screamed for help, but the caterers were in the kitchen, and the house was too large for anyone to hear. She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, her vision already starting to blur at the edges. She tried Marcus first. Voicemail. She tried Jennifer. No answer. With the last of her strength, she dialed the one person she knew would come no matter what. "Tyler," she gasped when her brother answered. "Something is wrong. The baby. There is so much blood. Rachel, where are you? Home. I am at home. Tyler, I think I am dying." The phone slipped from her fingers as another wave of agony crashed through her body. She heard her brother's voice, tiny and distant, screaming her name as everything went black. Tyler Morrison broke every speed limit between Queens and Greenwich. He was a construction worker, not a billionaire. He drove a pickup truck with rust spots and a passenger door that stuck in cold weather. The Greenwich police would have had every right to pull him over for doing 90 in a 55 zone, but something about the look on his face must have told them this was not a man to stop. Tyler had never liked Marcus Bennett. From the moment his sister had brought the tech billionaire home to meet their mother, something about the man had felt off. Too smooth, too polished, too perfect. But Rachel had been so happy, so in love, so convinced that she had finally found her fairy tale ending, and Tyler had kept his mouth shut because that was what good brothers did. They supported their sister's choices, even when those choices made their skin crawl. He used the emergency key Rachel had given him years ago, back when she still lived in a normal apartment in Brooklyn, back before Marcus had swept her away to his glass castle in Connecticut. The front door swung open, and Tyler's heart stopped. Rachel lay crumpled on the marble floor, surrounded by a spreading pool of crimson. Her face was the color of paper. Her breathing was so shallow he could barely see her chest moving. "Rach!" Tyler dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering uselessly over her body. He did not know where to apply pressure, did not know how to stop the bleeding, did not know anything except that his baby sister was dying in front of him. The paramedics arrived 7 minutes later, though it felt like 7 hours. They worked with efficient precision, loading Rachel onto a stretcher, shouting medical terminology that Tyler did not understand. Someone asked him about Rachel's medical history. Someone else asked about allergies. A third person asked where her husband was. That question hit Tyler like a physical blow. Where was Marcus? As the ambulance screamed toward Greenwich Hospital, Tyler tried Marcus's phone again. Voicemail. He tried Jennifer. Voicemail. He tried the main Bennett Technologies switchboard and got a recording saying the offices were closed for the weekend. His sister was bleeding out in an ambulance, and her billionaire husband was completely unreachable. Something was very, very wrong. Doctor. Patricia Williams had been a surgeon for 23 years, and she had learned long ago to deliver bad news with compassion, but without false hope. She found Tyler in the waiting room, still wearing sawdust-covered work clothes, his hands still stained with his sister's blood. "Mr. Morrison," she said, sitting down beside him, "I am Dr. Williams. I have been treating your sister." Tyler jumped to his feet. "Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" Dr. Williams gestured for him to sit back down. Her dark eyes were kind, but serious. "Your sister experienced a severe placental abruption. That means the placenta separated from the uterine wall before delivery. It caused massive internal bleeding." Tyler felt like the floor was tilting beneath him. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to perform an emergency cesarean section immediately. The baby is in distress, and Rachel is losing blood faster than we can replace it." Dr. Williams paused, making sure Tyler was following. "I will not lie to you. This is a life-threatening situation for both of them. But you can save them, right? You can save them both? We are going to do everything we can, but I need you to sign consent forms. You are listed as Rachel's emergency contact." Tyler stared at her. "I am her emergency contact. What about her husband?" Dr. Williams' expression flickered with something that might have been disapproval. "According to our records, you are the primary emergency contact. We have been unable to reach Mr. Bennett." Tyler signed the forms with hands that would not stop shaking. As Rachel disappeared behind Bahrain Jumayim operating room doors, he sank into a plastic chair and stared at his phone. He tried Marcus one more time. Voicemail. Something in Tyler's gut twisted. Marcus Bennett was many things, most of them unpleasant, but he was not careless with communication. His entire fortune had been built on being available to investors and board members around the clock. The idea that he would be completely unreachable during a genuine family emergency felt impossible, unless he was not where he claimed to be. Tyler pulled up the Find My Friends app that Rachel had insisted they all download years ago, back when their mother was still alive and worried about everyone's safety. Rachel's dot showed her at the hospital, which made sense. Tyler's own dot showed him in the same location. And Marcus's dot showed him in Stamford, Connecticut. Not London, not an airplane somewhere over the Atlantic. Stamford, 20 minutes away. Tyler stared at the screen for a long moment, his exhausted brain struggling to process what he was seeing. There had to be a mistake. Maybe Marcus had just landed at a private airport. Maybe his phone was connecting to a wrong tower. Maybe there was some perfectly innocent explanation. But Tyler had been a soldier before he became a construction worker. He had learned to trust his instincts. And his instincts were screaming that Marcus Bennett was exactly where the app said he was, doing something he definitely should not be doing while his wife fought for her life. Tyler screenshot the location and saved it to his phone. Then he settled in to wait. The surgery took 5 hours. Tyler paced the waiting room like a caged animal, drinking vending machine coffee that tasted like battery acid. ignoring calls from concerned relatives who had heard about the canceled baby shower. At 2:17 in the morning, Dr. Williams finally emerged. Her scrubs were stained with blood, but she was smiling. "She made it," Dr. Williams said. "It was close, very close, but your sister is a fighter." Tyler felt tears streaming down his face before he even realized he was crying. "And the baby? Your niece is small but strong. 4 pounds, 2 ounces. She will need to stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for several weeks. But her vitals are good. She is a fighter, just like her mother. Can I see them? Rachel is still unconscious, but you can see the baby." Tyler followed Dr. Williams through a maze of corridors to the NICU. Through a glass window, he could see rows of incubators, tiny humans surrounded by machines and tubes. Dr. Williams pointed to one of them. "That is Emma." Tyler pressed his palm against the glass. The baby was impossibly small, her skin almost translucent, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. She had a shock of dark hair, just like Rachel. "Your mom is going to be okay, little girl," Tyler whispered. "And I am going to make sure your dad gets here, even if I have to drag him back myself." But first, he needed to find out where Marcus Bennett really was. Diane Torres arrived at the hospital at 3 in the morning, still wearing pajamas under her coat. "Tyler, what the hell happened?" She ran to him, her dark eyes wide with fear. "I saw Rachel's text about the shower being canceled and then nothing. I have been calling her for hours." She collapsed. "Placental abruption. They had to do an emergency C-section. Oh my God." Diane sank into a chair. "Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" "They're both going to make it. But Diane, I need to show you something." Tyler pulled out his phone and showed her the screenshot of Marcus's location. Diane stared at it for a long moment. "That is not London. No, it is not. Where is that?" "Stamford. Some apartment complex off exit 5. Diane's expression hardened. "That son of a bitch. I do not want to jump to conclusions," Tyler said, even though he had already jumped to several. "Maybe there is an explanation." "Tyler, the only explanation for a married man to be at an apartment in Stamford instead of London while his wife almost dies is the explanation we are both thinking." Tyler knew she was right. He had known it the moment he saw that location dot, but he needed proof. Rachel deserved proof. "I know a guy," Diane said slowly, "a private investigator. He is expensive, but he is good. He found my ex-husband's hidden bank accounts during the divorce. How expensive? Expensive enough that a construction worker from Queens probably cannot afford him." But Diane pulled out her phone. "Lucky for you, a paralegal with a grudge against cheating husbands knows how to negotiate a payment plan." Marcus Bennett walked into Greenwich Hospital at 9:15 the next morning, looking every inch the concerned billionaire husband. He was carrying an enormous bouquet of white roses and wearing an expression of carefully calibrated worry. His suit was immaculate. His hair was perfectly styled. His shoes probably cost more than Tyler's monthly rent. "Rachel, my God," Marcus said, sweeping into her hospital room like he owned the place, which Tyler realized he might actually partly own, given the Bennett name on the new pediatric wing. "I came as soon as I heard." Rachel was awake now, pale and weak but alert. She had been asking for Marcus since the moment she regained consciousness, convinced that he must be frantic with worry. Tyler watched his sister's face light up when she saw her husband, and something in his chest cracked. "Marcus," Rachel breathed. "You are here." "Of course I am here." Marcus kissed her forehead, his hand resting gently on her cheek. "I caught the first flight back from London the moment Jennifer told me what happened. The satellite communications were down during my meetings. I had no idea anything was wrong. The lie was so smooth, so seamless, so perfectly delivered. If Tyler had not seen the location data with his own eyes, he might have believed it. "Have you seen Emma?" Rachel asked. "Not yet. I wanted to see you first. How are you feeling?" Tyler slipped out of the room. He could not stand to watch Marcus perform the role of devoted husband for another second. In the hallway, his phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "My guy can meet us tomorrow. He says he can find out exactly where Marcus was and who he was with. But, Tyler, are you sure you want to do this? Once Rachel knows, there is no going back." Tyler looked through the window at his sister, smiling weakly at the man who had abandoned her while she nearly died. He typed his response with steady fingers. "Do it. She deserves to know the truth." Carl Mendez looked nothing like a private investigator. In his faded jeans and Yankees hoodie, nursing a cup of bodega coffee, he could have been any middle-aged guy killing time in a Manhattan diner. But his eyes told a different story. They were sharp, observant, constantly scanning the room like a man who had spent decades cataloging human behavior. "So," Carl said, sliding into the booth across from Tyler and Diane, "you think your brother-in-law is stepping out on your sister while she is in the hospital with their premature baby?" Tyler nodded grimly. "I know how it sounds. It sounds like every case I have taken in the last 30 years. Carl shrugged. Rich guys cheating on their would-be-able is not exactly breaking news. The only question is how sloppy he is being about it. He was at an apartment in Stamford the night she almost died," Diane said. "His phone showed him there." Carl raised an eyebrow. "You have location data? Screenshot from Find My Friends?" "That is a start." Carl pulled out a worn notebook. "Tell me everything you know about the husband. Name, business, routine, anyone he might be sleeping with." Tyler and Diane spent the next hour laying out everything they knew about Marcus Bennett. His company, Bennett Technologies, his obsessive work schedule, his business trips that seemed to happen more and more frequently, the young woman he had hired 18 months ago as head of strategic development. Victoria Chase, Diane said. "She is 27, looks like a Victoria's Secret model, and Marcus talks about her like she invented the internet." Carl wrote the name down. "How does your sister feel about this Victoria?" Tyler thought about the few times Rachel had mentioned her. She said Marcus thinks Victoria is brilliant, has vision that most people cannot understand. Carl snorted. "Yeah, I bet she has vision. The vision is usually about 6 feet tall, with legs that go on forever." He closed his notebook. "Give me a week. I will find out exactly what your boy Marcus has been up to." 3 days later, Carl called with his first report. "Your brother-in-law has not been to London in 6 months," Carl said. "His private jet, tail number November 787 Romeo. Mike was supposed to fly to Heathrow last week, but the flight plan was amended. Twice? Where did he actually go?" "First to Los Angeles, then to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. He landed there the night your sister collapsed." Tyler felt his blood pressure spike. "Mexico? Gets better. Immigration records show 2 passengers on that flight, Marcus Bennett and Victoria Chase. They stayed at a resort called Casa del Mar, Presidential Suite, 4 nights." Tyler closed his eyes. He had known on some level that this was coming, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. "There is more," Carl continued. "I have a contact in Cabo, photographer who does work for celebrity magazines. He got pictures. What kind of pictures? The kind that would make your sister's divorce lawyer very happy." Tyler stared at the photographs spread across Carl's desk. Marcus and Victoria, walking hand in hand along a private beach. Victoria feeding Marcus strawberries at a candlelit dinner. Marcus kissing Victoria's neck while she laughed, her head thrown back in genuine joy. But the most damaging photo showed them at the resort spa. Marcus's wedding ring was clearly visible on a table beside the massage bed. And on Victoria's left hand, catching the Mexican sunlight, was an engagement ring that must have cost a fortune. Tyler zoomed in on the image. That ring is huge. At least 5 carats, Carl confirmed. Custom setting. I had a jeweler friend take a look. He estimates it cost somewhere north of $200,000. Rachel's engagement ring had been beautiful, but nothing like that. Marcus had made a big show of saying he wanted to upgrade it someday, when the company was more established. Apparently, he had upgraded, just not for Rachel. When did he propose to Rachel? Carl asked. 2.5 years ago. Well, he proposed to Victoria 3 weeks ago. At a private dinner in Malibu. I have the restaurant receipt. He ordered a $9,000 bottle of champagne. Tyler felt sick. This was not just an affair. This was a parallel life. Marcus had been building a future with another woman, while his wife sat at home, pregnant with his child, believing every lie he told her. She needs to know, Tyler said. Carl nodded slowly. She does. But here's the thing about delivering news like this. Timing matters. Your sister just had major surgery. Her baby is still in intensive care. If you drop this on her now, it could destroy her. And if I wait, Marcus has more time to cover his tracks. True. Carl leaned back in his chair. So you have to decide. What is more important right now, justice or your sister's health? It was an impossible question. Tyler did not know the answer, but Rachel made the decision for him. Rachel was sitting up in her hospital bed when Tyler arrived that afternoon. Something was different about her. The color had returned to her cheeks, and there was a sharpness in her eyes that Tyler had not seen in years. I need to talk to you, Rachel said. Close the door. Tyler did as she asked, his heart hammering. I have been thinking, Rachel continued, about the night I collapsed, about Marcus being unreachable, about how he just happened to catch the first flight back from London the moment he heard. Rach, maybe you should rest. I am done resting. Rachel's voice was steady. I have been lying in this bed for 3 days with nothing to do but think. And things are not adding up. What do you mean? Marcus said he was in crucial negotiations, that the satellite communications were down. That he came straight from the airport. Rachel shook her head. But Tyler, I know my husband. When he comes back from a long flight, he looks exhausted. His clothes are wrinkled. He has that stale airplane smell. And when he showed up here, he looked perfect. Fresh suit, perfect hair, like he had just stepped out of the shower. Rachel's eyes met Tyler's. He was not in London, was he? Tyler hesitated for only a moment. Then he pulled out his phone and showed her the location screenshot. And the photographs. Rachel's face went through a series of expressions as she looked at each image. First confusion, then disbelief. Then a kind of hollow shock that was worse than screaming would have been. That is not possible, she whispered, staring at the picture of Marcus kissing Victoria on the beach. He was in London. There has to be an explanation. Rach, the flight records do not lie. Rachel kept scrolling through the photos. When she reached the one showing Victoria's engagement ring, her hand flew to her own wedding set. A modest 3-carat diamond that had seemed enormous 3 years ago. Compared to Victoria's ring, it looked almost ordinary. He proposed to her, Rachel said flatly. While I was carrying his child, he proposed to another woman, 3 weeks ago, in Malibu. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she closed the phone and handed it back to Tyler. I want to see Emma, she said. Rach, we should talk about this. We should call a lawyer. I need to see my daughter. Tyler helped Rachel into a wheelchair, recognizing the tone in her voice. It was the same determined quiet she had used when their father left when they were kids, when she had decided to put herself through college, waiting tables. When she had built her career from nothing before Marcus had convinced her to give it all up. Rachel Morrison, before she became Rachel Bennett, had been a fighter. and Tyler was starting to see glimpses of that woman again. In the NICU, Rachel pressed her hands against Emma's incubator and began to cry. But these were not tears of self-pity. They were tears of rage. "He knew," she said softly. "When I called him 2 days before, I collapsed to tell him I was not feeling well. He knew he was going to Mexico with her. He kissed me goodbye that morning, Tyler. He told me he loved me. And the whole time, he was planning to propose to someone else." Tyler watched his sister's face transform. The naive woman who had trusted blindly was disappearing, replaced by someone harder, someone focused. "How long do you think this has been going on?" Rachel asked. "Carl is still digging, but based on the flight records, they have taken at least 6 trips together in the past year. Always when Marcus told you, he was traveling for business." Rachel was quiet for several minutes, her hand resting on the warm plastic of Emma's incubator. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "I want to know everything, every trip, every lie, every dollar he spent on her. I want receipts, photos, bank records, everything." "Rach, maybe you should focus on recovering first." "This can wait." "No, it cannot." Rachel turned to face him, and Tyler saw steel in her eyes that he had never seen before. "Because he is going to come back eventually. And he is going to have explanations for everything. He is going to make me feel crazy for doubting him. He is going to turn this around and make it my fault somehow." Tyler recognized the truth in that. Marcus had a talent for manipulation, for making other people question their own perceptions. "But if I have proof," Rachel continued, "if I have evidence he cannot deny or explain away, then I have power. For the first time in 3 years, I will have power." "What are you going to do?" Rachel looked back at Emma, sleeping peacefully despite the machines keeping her alive. "I am going to protect my daughter, and I am going to make sure Marcus Bennett pays for every single lie he has told me." 2 weeks later, Rachel was discharged from the hospital. Emma would need to stay in the NICU for several more weeks, but Rachel was finally strong enough to leave. She did not go back to the mansion in Greenwich. Instead, she checked into a hotel near the hospital, claiming she wanted to be close to Emma. The truth was simpler and more painful. She could not bear the thought of returning to the house where she had collapsed, where every room held memories of the life she had thought she was living. Diane helped her settle in, bringing takeout and wine and the kind of no-nonsense friendship that Rachel had desperately needed. "So, what is the plan?" Diane asked, pouring 2 generous glasses of Pinot Noir. "First, I need a lawyer, a good one, someone who specializes in high-asset divorces and is not afraid to go up against a billionaire." Diane grinned. "Girl, I have been waiting 3 years to hear you say that. I know exactly who you need." Helena Cross was everything Rachel had hoped for and more. At 48, she had built her reputation as Manhattan's most effective divorce attorney by refusing to be intimidated by powerful men and their expensive legal teams. Her office was decorated with framed newspaper articles about settlements she had won, each one featuring a wealthy husband who had underestimated her. "Your case is a nightmare," Helena told Rachel bluntly as they sat in her midtown office. "But it is a nightmare with potential." "What do you mean?" "The good news is that adultery gives us leverage, especially when combined with abandonment during a medical emergency. The bad news is that you signed a prenuptial agreement that is essentially bulletproof under normal circumstances." Rachel's heart sank. The prenup had been Marcus's condition for marriage. She had signed it without really reading it, too in love to imagine she would ever need to. "What makes circumstances abnormal?" "If we can prove the marriage was entered into under false pretenses," Helena said, "or if we can demonstrate that Marcus was already engaged in deceptive practices when you signed the agreement, we might be able to void it entirely." The private investigator has been documenting Marcus's trips with Victoria going back 18 months. That predates Emma's conception. Helena's eyes gleamed. That is helpful. But we need more. Financial records showing deception, evidence of hidden assets, proof that Marcus was planning to leave you while keeping you in the dark about the family's true financial situation. How do we get that kind of evidence? Helena smiled, and there was something predatory in it. We make him think he has won, then we watch him get careless. The plan Helena outlined was risky but brilliant. Rachel would play the role of the defeated wife, grateful for whatever settlement Marcus was willing to offer, focused on Emma's health rather than fighting about money. Meanwhile, Helena's team would conduct forensic accounting of Bennett Technologies. Carl would continue investigating Victoria's background, and Rachel would gather every piece of evidence she could from inside the marriage. The key is making them believe you are not a threat, Helena explained. Rich men, like Marcus, assume women like you will accept whatever they are given, rather than fight and risk ending up with nothing. We use that arrogance against him. What if they are right? What if I fight and lose everything? Helena leaned forward. Then you lose everything with your dignity intact, and your daughter knowing her mother was brave enough to fight for her. Rachel thought about Emma, so small and fragile in her incubator. She thought about all the things she wanted to give her daughter. Security, stability, a mother who did not let herself be walked over. When do we start? Helena smiled. We already have. That evening, Rachel returned to the Greenwich mansion for the first time since her collapse. Marcus was waiting in the living room, champagne chilling in a silver bucket. His smile was warm and welcoming, the perfect picture of a husband overjoyed to have his wife home. I thought we should celebrate, he said, pouring 2 glasses. Emma is doing so well. And you are finally out of that hospital. This is thoughtful. Rachel accepted the glass, but did not drink from it. She had noticed over the years that Marcus's generosity always coincided with his guilt about something. I have been thinking about our future, Marcus continued, about what kind of life we want to build for Emma. Rachel arranged her face into an expression of hopeful interest. Oh, I know my traveling has put strain on our marriage, so I have been considering restructuring my responsibilities at the company. Promoting Victoria to Chief Operating Officer. She has been handling more of the day-to-day operations anyway, and she is incredibly capable. It would free me up to spend more time with you and Emma. Rachel's stomach churned. Marcus was essentially offering to promote his mistress while pretending it was a sacrifice for his family. That sounds like a big responsibility for someone so young, Rachel said carefully. Age does not matter when you have vision. Victoria sees the future of technology in ways that most people cannot comprehend. I am sure she does. Marcus missed the sarcasm entirely. Actually, I was thinking you might like to meet her properly. She has been asking about you, worried about your health. The audacity was breathtaking. But Rachel smiled and nodded and played the role of grateful wife. Maybe once I ain't them feeling stronger, she said. Of course, there is no rush. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it with an expression Rachel recognized. The same anticipatory smile. The same secretive pleasure. I should take this. Business emergency. He stepped out onto the terrace, and through the glass doors, Rachel could hear fragments of conversation. Not business talk. Intimate laughter. Whispered endearments. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral again. Sorry about that. Crisis averted. Rachel excused herself to bed early, claiming fatigue. But she lay awake for hours, listening to the muffled sound of Marcus's voice as he continued his conversation with Victoria. The war had begun, and Rachel was finally ready to fight. 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, Rachel received the news she had been desperately hoping for. Helena called at 7 in the morning, her usually composed voice crackling with excitement. We got them, Helena said. Bennett Technologies has been moving money through offshore accounts for the past 2 years. Shell companies, hidden assets, tax avoidance schemes that border on fraud. Rachel's heart raced. How much money? Conservative estimate? $50 million that should have been declared as marital assets. With this evidence, we can void the prenup and go after half of everything, including the hidden accounts. So I can protect Emma's future? More than that. You can make sure Marcus faces real consequences for what he has done. Rachel felt dizzy with relief. For the first time since the nightmare began, she could see a path forward, a way to provide for her daughter without being dependent on a man who had betrayed her in every possible way. What happens next? I am filing papers this afternoon. Emergency motion to freeze all Bennett Technologies assets pending investigation. By tomorrow morning, Marcus will not be able to move a dime without court approval. That evening, Rachel allowed herself to celebrate. Diane came over with champagne. Tyler brought pizza. Emma was doing well enough to be moved out of the NICU next week. Everything was finally coming together. To karma finally doing its job, Diane said, raising her glass. To my sister, Tyler added, who is about to take that snake for everything he is worth. Rachel smiled, feeling genuine happiness for the first time in months. To Emma, to our fresh start. They ate and drank and laughed, and for a few precious hours, Rachel forgot about the betrayal and the pain and the terrifying uncertainty of the past weeks. She checked on Emma via the NICU video feed. Her daughter was sleeping peacefully, gaining weight every day, getting stronger. Everything was going to be okay. The next morning, Rachel woke to a phone call that shattered everything. Mrs. Bennett? It was Jennifer, Marcus's assistant. Her voice was strangely formal. Mr. Bennett needs you to come to the house immediately. There are some papers that require your signature. What kind of papers? I am not at liberty to say, but it is urgent. Rachel felt a chill despite the warm hotel room. Something was wrong. Marcus never needed her to sign anything urgently. He had accountants and lawyers who handled all of that. I will be there in an hour, she said. She called Helena on the way to Greenwich, but the call went straight to voicemail. She called Diane. Voicemail. Tyler. Voicemail. By the time she pulled up to the mansion, Rachel's hands were shaking. Marcus was waiting in the formal living room. He was not alone. A woman Rachel did not recognize sat beside him on the white leather sofa. She was older, elegant, with the kind of polished appearance that came from a lifetime of expensive lawyers and even more expensive threats. And standing behind them was a man in a police uniform. Rachel, Marcus said, his voice dripping with false concern. Please sit down. We need to talk. What is going on? Who are these people? This is Margaret Ellis, Marcus said. She is a court-appointed supervisor. Supervisor for what? Marcus sighed heavily. Performing regret with practiced skill. Rachel, I did not want it to come to this, but I have been advised that your recent behavior poses a serious risk to Emma's well-being. Rachel felt like the floor was dropping out beneath her. My behavior? The paranoid accusations, the private investigators, the bizarre belief that I was having an affair instead of conducting business overseas. Marcus shook his head, sadly. Dr. Patterson has expressed concerns about postpartum psychosis. I do not have postpartum psychosis. The symptoms often include denial, the woman named Margaret said primly, along with paranoid delusions, obsessive behavior, and inability to distinguish between reality and fantasy. Rachel's blood ran cold. This was not happening. This could not be happening. What are you saying? The officer stepped forward. He did not look happy about his role in whatever this was. Mrs. Bennett, the court has issued a temporary order restricting your access to your daughter, pending a psychiatric evaluation. Restricting my access? She is my daughter, and she will remain safe in your husband's care while you receive the help you need. Marcus stood, approaching Rachel with arms outstretched. Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but we all just want what is best for Emma, including you getting better. Rachel backed away from him. Do not touch me. You see? Margaret made a note on her clipboard. Paranoid avoidance behavior. Classic symptom. I am not paranoid. I have proof that he was cheating on me. What proof? Marcus's voice was calm, reasonable. Proof that I was at a colleague's apartment discussing business? Proof that I had dinner with coworkers while traveling? Rachel, the mind can interpret innocent events as threatening when it is unwell. The photographs, the flight records, the engagement ring. Marcus spread his hands. What photographs? What flight records? Darling, I have been in London. The whole board can vouch for me. As for an engagement ring, Marcus held up his left hand, his wedding band gleaming. I am already married to the love of my life. Rachel stared at him, her mind reeling. The evidence. Helena had the evidence. Carl had the photographs. I need to call my lawyer, Rachel said. I am afraid that will not be possible right now, Margaret interjected. Part of the evaluation process requires limited contact with outside influences who might be feeding your delusions. This is insane. You cannot do this. The officer shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I have a court order here. I am required to escort you to Pinehurst Wellness Center for a 72-hour evaluation. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Rachel looked from face to face. Marcus, wearing an expression of pained love. Margaret, clinical and detached. The officer, apologetic but determined. She had been outmaneuvered. Completely. Let me get my purse, Rachel said quietly. Let me say goodbye to my daughter. I am afraid that is not possible, Margaret said. Contact with Emma might be triggering for you in your current state. And that was when Rachel understood the full scope of what was happening. Marcus was not just trying to win a divorce. He was trying to have her declared mentally incompetent, take full custody of Emma, erase Rachel from her daughter's life entirely. And she had walked right into his trap. The Pinehurst Wellness Center was a psychiatric facility that catered to wealthy families who wanted their problems handled discreetly. The building was beautiful. Manicured grounds, private rooms that looked more like hotel suites than hospital wards, staff who spoke in soothing voices and smiled constantly, but it was still a cage. Rachel spent the first 24 hours in a state of shock. They took her phone, they took her clothes, replacing them with soft gray sweats. They took her jewelry, including her wedding ring. A psychiatrist named Dr. Morris interviewed her on the second day. Mrs. Bennett, he said gently, can you tell me why you think you are here? Because my husband is trying to steal my daughter and my lawyer apparently sold me out. Dr. Morris made a note. Your husband says you have been experiencing paranoid thoughts, believing he was having an affair when he was actually conducting business overseas. I have photographs. Do you? Dr. Morris's voice was kind but skeptical. Do you have these photographs with you? Can you show them to me? Rachel's throat tightened. No, they took my phone. I see. And these photographs, what did they show? My husband in Mexico with another woman, a woman he has been having an affair with for over a year. Dr. Morris nodded slowly. Mrs. Bennett, I have spoken with your husband. He has provided flight records showing he was in London during the dates you mentioned. He has provided statements from colleagues who were in meetings with him. He has provided evidence that the woman you believe to be his mistress was actually in Singapore during the same period. That is impossible. Is it? Or is it possible that the stress of your difficult pregnancy, combined with the trauma of nearly losing your life, has affected your perception of events? Rachel stared at him. He was not being cruel. He genuinely believed what he was saying, which meant Marcus had fabricated evidence, real evidence, documentation and witnesses, and whatever else it took to make Rachel's truth look like delusion. She was not fighting a cheating husband anymore. She was fighting a system designed to protect wealthy men from the consequences of their actions, and that system had just swallowed her whole. On the third day, Rachel had a visitor. She was sitting in the common room, staring at a television. She was not really watching when a staff member approached. "Mrs. Bennett, your mother-in-law is here to see you." Rachel did not have a mother-in-law. Marcus's mother had died when he was 12. She walked to the visitor's room on numb legs, unsure what fresh nightmare awaited. The woman sitting at the table was not anyone Rachel recognized. She was in her 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of elegant bearing that spoke of old money and good breeding. "Rachel," the woman said, gesturing to the chair across from her, "please sit. We do not have much time." "Who are you?" "My name is Evelyn Grant. I am Victoria Chase's former mother-in-law." Rachel sat down slowly. "Victoria was married?" "For 3 years. To my son, Robert." Evelyn's voice was brittle with controlled anger. "She took him for $4 million and very nearly destroyed our family's reputation in the process. I do not understand. Why are you here?" "Because I have been watching the news. I recognized the signs. The sudden psychiatric commitment. The isolated wife. The husband making sympathetic statements about wanting to help." Evelyn leaned forward. "It is the same playbook she used with Robert. Victoria did this before." "Victoria Chase is not her real name. Her real name is Amber Jenkins. She is a professional con artist who has targeted at least 3 wealthy men that I know of. She gets close to them, manipulates them into abandoning their families, then disappears with whatever money she can extract." Rachel felt the room tilting. "But Marcus is not a victim. He was cheating on me. Of course he was. And he is also being played." Evelyn's voice was grim. "Amber does not just target the husbands. She studies the entire family situation. She finds men who are already unhappy, already looking for an excuse to leave. Then she gives them that excuse while positioning herself to profit." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because when Robert finally realized what had happened, it was too late. He had already divorced his wife, alienated his children, and handed over access to accounts he should have protected." Evelyn's eyes were hard. "I will not let another family be destroyed the way mine was." She slid a business card across the table. "This is a lawyer, a real one, not one who can be bought by your husband's money. Call him the moment you get out of here." "And Rachel," Evelyn stood, "do not let them convince you that you are crazy. The most dangerous thing about gaslighting is how effective it is." Rachel was released from Pinehurst after the mandatory 72-hour hold. The evaluation concluded that while she was experiencing significant stress, there was no evidence of psychosis or any condition that would prevent her from caring for her daughter. But when she arrived at Greenwich Hospital to see Emma, security stopped her at the NICU entrance. "I am sorry, Mrs. Bennett." The guard looked uncomfortable. "Your visitation has been restricted pending a court review." "Restricted? That is my daughter." "I understand, ma'am, but there is a court order. Supervised visits only. Once a week. 1 hour." Through the glass doors, Rachel could see the NICU. And there, standing beside Emma's incubator, was Marcus. He was holding their daughter, smiling down at her, playing the role of devoted father for whatever audience might be watching. Rachel pounded on the glass, screaming his name. Security escorted her out of the building. Diane was waiting outside, tears streaming down her face. "Rach, I am so sorry. I tried to call. I tried to come to that place. They would not let anyone in. What happened to Helena? Where is the evidence? Gone. All of it." Diane's voice shook. "Helena's firm announced they were no longer representing you due to conflicts of interest. Carl said all his files were stolen from his office. Every photograph, every document, everything. That is not possible. Marcus has resources we cannot even imagine. He had 3 days while you were locked up. 3 days to buy off everyone who was helping you and destroy everything we had gathered. Rachel sank onto a bench outside the hospital, her legs unable to support her anymore. She had no lawyer, no evidence, no money, and worst of all, no access to her daughter. Marcus had won. "What am I going to do?" Rachel whispered. Diane sat down beside her and took her hand. "You are going to fight," Diane said firmly. "I do not know how yet, but you are the strongest person I know, and you are not going to let that man take your daughter." But first, Rachel needed somewhere to stay. Her accounts had been frozen. The mansion was off limits. Every credit card she tried was declined. She was a billionaire's wife, and she could not afford a hotel room. "You are staying with me," Diane said. "My couch is not much, but it is yours for as long as you need it." That night, lying on Diane's threadbare sofa, in her tiny queen's apartment, Rachel stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out how her life had fallen apart so completely. She had $47 in her wallet. A daughter she could not see, a husband who had convinced the world she was crazy, and absolutely nothing left to lose, which she was about to discover made her more dangerous than Marcus could possibly imagine. Rachel spent the next 2 weeks in a fog of despair. She pumped breast milk she was not allowed to give her daughter. She applied for jobs that would not hire her because her name now appeared in news articles about rich people's messy divorces. She called lawyer after lawyer, but none of them would take her case once they heard she was going up against Marcus Bennett. The system was designed to crush people like her, and it was doing its job efficiently. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, everything changed. Diane was at work. Rachel was alone in the apartment, scrolling through job listings she knew would never lead anywhere when someone knocked on the door. She was not expecting anyone. She had stopped expecting anything. Through the peephole, Rachel saw a woman she recognized, Victoria Chase. Rachel's hand trembled on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at her not to open it. This was the woman who had destroyed her marriage. The woman who was probably living in Rachel's house right now, sleeping in Rachel's bed, playing mother to Rachel's daughter. But curiosity won. Rachel opened the door. Victoria looked different from the photographs Carl had shown her. Thinner, paler, dark circles under her eyes that no amount of expensive concealer could hide. She looked like a woman who had not slept in weeks. "I need to talk to you," Victoria said. "Can I come in? Why would I let you into my home?" "Because I can help you get Emma back." Rachel stared at her for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. Victoria sat on Diane's couch, her hands wrapped around a glass of water she was not drinking. "My real name is Amber Jenkins," she said. "I am a con artist. I have been running this particular scheme for 8 years." Rachel's jaw tightened. "You destroy families for money. I target men who are already going to destroy their families. I just accelerate the process and make sure I benefit from it." Amber's voice was flat, emotionless. "It is not a defense, just an explanation. Why are you here? Because Marcus is not like the others." "What do you mean?" Amber finally looked up. "The men I targeted before were weak, vain, easily manipulated. They cheated because it made them feel powerful. They left their wives because they wanted younger models. They were pathetic, but they were not dangerous. And Marcus is a monster." Amber's voice cracked. "I thought I was playing him, but he has been playing me the entire time." Rachel felt something shift in her chest. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. She knew what it felt like to think you were in control and then realize you were just another piece on someone else's board. "What did he do?" "He put his hands around my throat last week," Amber said quietly. "Told me that if I ever tried to leave, he would destroy me the same way he destroyed you." And I believed him. "Because I have seen what he can do." "Why would he threaten you?" "I thought you were getting married." Amber laughed bitterly. There was never going to be a wedding. Marcus does not want a partner. He wants possessions. I was useful while he was getting rid of you. Now that you are out of the picture, I am just another liability. Rachel processed this information slowly. So, you are not here out of guilt. You are here because you need my help. I am here because we both need each other's help. Amber pulled out a USB drive. I have been recording every conversation Marcus and I have had for the past 6 months. Insurance in case things went bad. And Rachel, they have gone very, very bad. What is on that drive? Everything. Marcus admitting he fabricated your psychiatric records. Marcus and his mother planning how to frame you for fraud. Marcus discussing how to keep Emma away from you permanently. Amber placed the drive on the coffee table between them. It is enough to destroy him. If we use it right. Rachel listened to the recordings with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Marcus's voice, cold and calculating, discussing Rachel like she was a problem to be managed rather than a person he had once loved. The postpartum psychosis angle is perfect, Marcus said on one recording. No one questions a mother's mental health after a traumatic birth. We just need a couple of doctors willing to sign off. And Rachel becomes the crazy ex-wife who cannot be trusted with her own child. Victoria's voice responded, "And what about me? What is my role after the divorce is final? You will be Emma's stepmother, of course. Eventually, we need to wait a respectable amount of time. But Victoria, you understand how this works. You play your part, and you will be rewarded handsomely." "And if Rachel fights back?" Marcus laughed. "With what?" "I have already bought her lawyer. I am working on the private investigator. And once she is committed for psychiatric evaluation, no one will believe anything she says." The recording went on for hours. Rachel and Amber listened together, building a picture of systematic destruction that went far beyond a simple affair. Marcus had been planning to get rid of Rachel since before Emma was conceived. The pregnancy had just given him a convenient timeline. That night, Tyler and Diane joined them in the cramped apartment. "So, let me get this straight," Tyler said, pacing the small living room. "The woman who helped destroy my sister's life is now our best ally?" "She is our only ally," Rachel said. "And she has evidence that could actually win this thing." "Evidence obtained how?" Diane crossed her arms. "By secretly recording conversations?" "That might not even be admissible in court." "It does not need to be admissible," Amber said. "It just needs to be public." Marcus's entire empire is built on his reputation. Brilliant young tech CEO, devoted family man, philanthropist. If those recordings get out, his investors will flee. His board will turn on him. Everything he has built will crumble. You want to go to the press? "I want to give Marcus a choice," Rachel said. "The same choice he gave me. Surrender everything, or watch your world burn." Diane shook her head. "Rachel, this is dangerous. You are talking about blackmailing a billionaire." "I am talking about fighting fire with fire." Rachel's voice was steady. "Marcus used his money and his power to crush me, to take my daughter, to make me look crazy. Well, now I have something he cannot buy. The truth." Tyler studied his sister's face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "What do you need from us?" "I need you to help me set up a meeting with Marcus, alone." "That is insane," Diane protested. "He could have you arrested. He could have you committed again." "He could," Rachel agreed, "but he will not. Because I am going to make him an offer he cannot refuse." The meeting was arranged for Friday evening at a restaurant in Greenwich. Neutral ground, public enough to prevent any violence, but private enough for a serious conversation. Rachel arrived first. She ordered water and waited. Marcus walked in at exactly 7 o'clock. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His smile was confident, almost amused. "Rachel," he said, sliding into the seat across from her, "I was surprised you wanted to meet." My lawyers advised against it. I am sure they did. They think you are unstable, that this meeting could be some kind of trap. Rachel smiled. They are half right. Marcus's expression flickered. What does that mean? It means I have spent the past month learning how to play your game. And Marcus, I have gotten very good at it. She pulled out her phone and played a 30-second clip of one of Amber's recordings. Marcus's voice filled the space between them. The postpartum psychosis angle is perfect. No one questions a mother's mental health after a traumatic birth. Marcus's face went pale. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Rachel kept her voice conversational, almost pleasant. The point is that I have 12 hours of recordings just like that one. You and Victoria planning to destroy me. You admitting to fraud. You discussing how to bribe officials. That is illegally obtained evidence. It is not admissible. Maybe not in court. Rachel leaned forward, but it would make fascinating listening for your investors, your board members, the journalists who write those glowing profiles about the brilliant young CEO with the perfect family. You are bluffing. Am I? Rachel pulled out a printed email. This is a message from Sarah Chen at the Wall Street Journal. She has been working on a story about tech industry scandals. I have offered her an exclusive. Marcus stared at the paper. His confidence was cracking. What do you want? Rachel listed her terms. Full custody of Emma. Uncontested. The prenup voided. $50 million, which is less than what you hid in those offshore accounts. And Marcus, this is the important part. You will never contact me or my daughter again. No visitation, no phone calls, nothing. That is absurd. It is the price of your reputation. Rachel stood. You have until Monday to decide. If I do not have signed documents by noon, those recordings go public. She walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip her car keys. But she did not let it show until she was safely in the parking lot. Then she called Diane. It is done. Now we wait. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a cold rain that seemed to match Rachel's mood. She had not slept more than a few hours since the meeting with Marcus. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, the way his confidence had cracked, the calculation behind his eyes as he weighed his options. She had pushed him into a corner, and cornered animals were dangerous. At 11:45, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Documents signed. Being delivered to your lawyer now. Rachel stared at the screen. She had given Marcus the name of the lawyer Evelyn had recommended, a man named David Stone who had proven impossible to bribe. Could it really be over? She called David immediately. Mr. Stone, it is Rachel Bennett. Did you receive documents from my husband? I did. David's voice was cautious. Mrs. Bennett, these papers give you everything you asked for. Full custody. The prenup voided. $50 million settlement. Rachel felt tears streaming down her face. So it worked? He actually gave in? It appears so. But Mrs. Bennett, I need you to understand something. I have been practicing law for 30 years. Men like Marcus Bennett do not surrender this easily. What are you saying? I am saying, be careful. Read every word of these documents before you sign anything, and watch your back. That evening, Rachel went to Diane's apartment to celebrate. Diane had bought champagne. Tyler had ordered pizza. Even Amber was there, looking uncomfortable, but cautiously hopeful. To getting your life back, Diane said, raising her glass. To Emma, Tyler added, who is finally going to have her mother back. Rachel smiled, but something felt wrong. The victory was too clean, too easy. Marcus Bennett did not lose gracefully. He did not give up $50 million without a fight. So, what was she missing? The answer came at 9:17 in the form of pounding on Diane's door. NYPD, open up. Diane went pale. What the hell? Tyler moved to the door, blocking it with his body. Do you have a warrant? We do. Open the door, or we break it down. They opened the door. 3 officers entered, followed by a detective who looked like he had seen too many cases like this one. Rachel Morrison Bennett? The detective held up a badge. You are under arrest for wire fraud and extortion. Rachel's world tilted. What? We have evidence that you attempted to blackmail Marcus Bennett using illegally obtained recordings, and that you conspired with Amber Jenkins to defraud Bennett Technologies of company funds. That is insane. I have not defrauded anyone. Tell it to the judge. The detective nodded to the officers. Cuff her. As the cold metal closed around her wrists, Rachel looked at Amber. Amber was not moving, was not protesting, was not doing anything except staring at the floor with an expression Rachel could not read. You, Rachel breathed. You set me up. Amber finally looked up. Her eyes were wet. I am sorry, Rachel. He threatened my family, my mother, my sister. I did not have a choice. The recordings? Real, but edited. He cut out the parts that made him look bad and added context that makes you look like the criminal. Rachel felt the last of her hope crumbling. She had trusted Amber, had believed they were allies, had thought she finally had the upper hand. But Marcus had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. The officers led her out of the apartment. Diane was screaming at the detective. Tyler was demanding to call a lawyer, but their voices faded as Rachel was pushed into the back of a police car. Through the window, she caught one last glimpse of Amber standing in the doorway. The woman mouthed 2 words before the car pulled away. I am sorry. The holding cell at the Manhattan Detention Center was cold and gray and smelled like despair. Rachel sat on a metal bench, her head in her hands, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. She had been so close. The signed documents, the custody agreement, her daughter. And now she was facing federal charges that could put her in prison for years. At 2 in the morning, a guard appeared at her cell. Bennett, you have a visitor. Rachel followed the guard to a visiting room, expecting to see David Stone or maybe Diane. The woman waiting for her was neither. She was in her 60s, silver-haired, elegant despite the late hour, and harsh, fluorescent lighting. Mrs. Bennett, the woman said. My name is Margaret Bennett. I am Marcus's mother. Rachel froze. Marcus told me his mother was dead. He tells everyone that. It is easier than explaining why she refuses to speak to him. Margaret gestured to the chair across from her. Please, sit. We do not have much time. Why are you here? Because my son has become a monster, and I refuse to let him destroy another innocent woman. Rachel sat down slowly, her mind reeling. Another woman? Marcus's first wife, Margaret said. Elizabeth. She died in a car accident 8 years ago. At least, that is the official story. What is the unofficial story? Elizabeth tried to leave him. She had evidence of affairs, financial crimes, abuse. She was going to take their son and disappear. Margaret's voice was heavy with old grief. She died 2 weeks before the divorce was finalized. Single car accident on a rain-slicked road. No witnesses. You think Marcus killed her? I think my son is capable of anything when it comes to protecting his empire. And Rachel, she leaned forward, I think you are in more danger than you realize. I am already in jail facing federal charges. Those charges will disappear, Margaret said. That is not Marcus's endgame. The arrest is just a distraction, a way to keep you locked up while he executes his real plan, which is, Amber Jenkins was never working for Marcus. She was working for me. Margaret pulled out a folder thick with documents. I have been gathering evidence against my son for years, waiting for the right moment to bring him down. And Rachel, that moment is now. The federal charges against Rachel were dropped 72 hours after her arrest. The official explanation was insufficient evidence. The real explanation was far more complicated. Margaret Bennett had spent 20 years building a case against her own son, financial records, witness statements, documentation of bribery, fraud, and worse. Evidence that could not be bought or destroyed because Margaret had hidden it in places Marcus did not even know existed, and now she was finally ready to use it. "I do not understand," Rachel said, sitting in David Stone's office with Margaret, Tyler, and Diane. "Why now? Why help me?" "Because you are the first woman who fought back hard enough to survive," Margaret said. "Elizabeth gave up when things got hard. The others took settlements and signed non-disclosure agreements, but you refused to stop fighting, even when it cost you everything. She could have let Marcus destroy me. She could have. But here's the thing about my son." Margaret's voice hardened. "He has to win. Completely. Totally. He cannot leave enemies behind. If you had taken a settlement and walked away quietly, he might have let you go. But you challenged him, threatened him, and that means he will not stop until you are destroyed. So what do? We destroy him first." The plan Margaret outlined was elegant in its simplicity. Marcus's power came from his reputation, his image as a brilliant, ethical businessman who had built his fortune through innovation and hard work. That image was a lie. Bennett Technologies had been built on stolen intellectual property, partnerships formed through bribery, competitors crushed through illegal means, and at the center of it all was Marcus, a man who had never played by the rules a single day in his life. "I have documents," Margaret said. "Patents that were stolen from small inventors, contracts that were obtained through blackmail, financial records showing systematic fraud. Why did you not use them before?" "Because I was afraid." Margaret's voice cracked slightly. "Marcus has resources I cannot match. If I had moved against him and failed, he would have destroyed me, and then there would be no one left to stop him." "What changed?" "You," Margaret said simply. "You showed me that it is possible to fight back, that the system can work if you are brave enough to use it." The press conference was held on a Tuesday morning in front of the Manhattan Federal Courthouse. Margaret stood at a podium, flanked by lawyers and surrounded by reporters. Behind her, massive screens displayed the evidence she had spent 2 decades collecting. Rachel watched from a coffee shop across the street, Emma finally in her arms again. The custody order had been reversed 3 days earlier, the judge citing significant evidence of fraud in the original proceedings. Rachel had cried for an hour straight when they placed her daughter in her arms. Now she watched as Margaret systematically dismantled her own son's empire. "My son Marcus Bennett has spent 20 years building a facade of respectability," Margaret said, her voice steady. "That facade ends today. The documents scrolled across the screens. Stolen patents, forged contracts, bribery payments to government officials, evidence of fraud so comprehensive that no lawyer in the world could make it disappear. I am also announcing," Margaret continued, "that I am turning over evidence to federal prosecutors regarding the death of Elizabeth Bennett, my former daughter-in-law. Evidence that suggests her death was not an accident." The reporters erupted with questions. Cameras flashed. And somewhere in Greenwich, Marcus Bennett was watching his world collapse. Marcus was arrested that afternoon at JFK Airport, trying to board a private jet to a country without an extradition treaty. The footage of him being led away in handcuffs played on every news channel for days. The brilliant tech CEO, the devoted family man, the philanthropist, reduced to just another criminal trying to flee justice. Rachel watched the coverage from Diane's apartment, Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms. "How do you feel?" Tyler asked. Rachel thought about the question. She had expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, gleeful at watching her tormentor fall. Instead, she felt empty, tired, and strangely sad. "I feel like I want this to be over," she said finally. I want to stop thinking about Marcus Bennett every minute of every day. I want to build a life that has nothing to do with him. So do that, Diane said. Take the settlement, take your daughter, and go build something beautiful. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Rachel received full custody of Emma, the prenup voided due to fraud, and a settlement of $120 million. It was more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. But more importantly, she received her freedom. On a sunny morning in April, Rachel loaded the last box into a moving truck outside Diane's apartment. She was moving to Vermont, a farmhouse with a big yard where Emma could play, a small town where no one would know or care that she had once been married to a billionaire. You sure about this? Tyler asked. You could stay in the city, be close to family. Rachel smiled. I need a fresh start, a place where Rachel Bennett does not exist, just Rachel Morrison and her daughter. Diane hugged her fiercely. You better visit, and call, and send pictures of Emma every single day. I promise. Rachel got into the car, Emma secure in her car seat, and drove away from the city that had nearly destroyed her. In the rearview mirror, Manhattan's skyline grew smaller and smaller until it finally disappeared. Ahead of her was a road she had never traveled, leading to a future she could not predict. And for the first time, in longer than she could remember, Rachel felt hope. 1 year later, Rachel Morrison stood on the porch of her Vermont farmhouse and watched the sun set over the mountains. Emma was 2 now, toddling through the grass on sturdy legs, chasing fireflies that blinked like tiny stars. Her laughter rang out across the yard, pure and joyful, untouched by the darkness that had surrounded her first months of life. Rachel had kept her promise to Diane. She called every week, sent photos every day, and twice a year she drove back to New York so Emma could know her aunt and uncle. But Vermont was home now. She taught English part-time at the local high school. The students knew her as Mrs. Morrison, the teacher who always had time to listen, who believed in second chances, who seemed to understand what it felt like to have the world turn against you. They did not know about the billionaire, the betrayal, the fight for survival. They just knew she was kind. Tyler visited every few months, driving up from New York, with Diane squeezed into his truck's passenger seat. You know, Diane said, watching Emma play, you could have stayed rich in the city, had nannies and housekeepers, and never worked another day in your life. Rachel shook her head. That was never the life I wanted. I just got distracted for a while. She had donated most of her settlement to charity, enough to live comfortably, to ensure Emma would never want for anything, but not enough to change who she was. The Rachel who clipped coupons, who drove a practical car, who valued hard work over luxury. That Rachel was back now, stronger than before. That evening, after Tyler and Diane had gone to bed in the guest room, Rachel sat on the porch with a glass of wine and a baby monitor. The night was quiet. Stars blanketed the sky in a way they never did in the city. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Her phone buzzed with an email. From Margaret Bennett. Subject, Update. Rachel, I wanted you to know that Marcus's trial concluded yesterday. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 25 years with no possibility of parole. I testified against my own son. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the right thing. Elizabeth deserves justice. You deserve justice. And the world deserves to know what kind of man Marcus really was. I hope you and Emma are thriving. I hope you have found the peace that eluded you for so long. You are stronger than you know, Rachel. Never forget that. With respect and admiration, Margaret, Rachel read the email twice. Then she deleted it. Marcus Bennett was part of her past now. He did not deserve space in her present. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Rachel was grading papers at her kitchen table when someone knocked on the door. She was not expecting anyone. Through the window, she saw a delivery truck idling in the driveway. A man in a uniform stood on her porch, holding a small package. Rachel opened the door. "Can I help you?" "Delivery for Rachel Morrison." "Sign here, please." She signed and took the package. It was light, barely heavier than an envelope. No return address? Inside, she found a single photograph. It showed a beach, palm trees, crystal blue water, and Marcus Bennett, standing in the surf, holding a baby boy. On the back, written in handwriting she recognized, were 4 words: "See you soon, Rachel." Rachel stood in her kitchen, staring at the photograph, her heart pounding. Marcus was supposed to be in prison, 25 years. No parole, but the man in the photograph was clearly Marcus. Same face, same arrogant stance, same cold eyes. With shaking hands, she called David Stone. "Mr. Stone, it is Rachel Morrison. I need to know if Marcus Bennett is still in custody." A long pause. "Mrs. Morrison, I am afraid I have difficult news. There was an incident during a prison transport 3 weeks ago. Marcus escaped." "Escaped? How is that possible?" "He had help. Inside help. We believe he had been planning it for months. Where is he now? We do not know. He fled the country, somewhere without extradition. The FBI is looking, but frankly, with his resources, he could be anywhere." Rachel felt her world tilting again, the familiar sensation of the ground dropping out beneath her feet. But this time, something was different. This time, she was not alone, not helpless, not afraid. She looked out the window at Emma, playing happily in the yard. Then she looked at the photograph again. The threat it represented, the message it was sending. "See you soon." Marcus wanted her to run, to hide, to spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. He wanted her to be afraid. Rachel picked up the phone again. "Tyler," she said when her brother answered, "I need you to come to Vermont. We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that does not go away on its own." Rachel's voice was steady. "Marcus is out. He sent me a message. Son of a bitch, I will be there tonight. Bring Diane. And Tyler, pack like you are staying a while." She hung up and walked to the window. Emma was still playing, completely unaware of the shadow that had fallen over their peaceful life. Rachel watched her daughter for a long moment. The old Rachel would have run, would have grabbed Emma and disappeared, started over somewhere new, spent her life hiding from a man who would never stop hunting her. But the old Rachel was gone. In her place was a woman who had survived betrayal, gaslighting, false imprisonment, and the systematic destruction of everything she loved. A woman who had learned that running only delayed the inevitable. Marcus Bennett wanted a fight? Fine, Rachel would give him a war. She walked to her bedroom closet and pulled out a box she had not opened in over a year. Inside were files, documents, evidence that Margaret had given her as insurance, evidence of other crimes Marcus had committed, other victims he had destroyed, other secrets he had buried, enough to make sure that even if he evaded justice, his empire would never recover, enough to turn every person he had ever wronged into an ally against him. Rachel carried the box to her kitchen table and began to organize its contents. The fairy tale was over. It had been over the moment she collapsed on that marble floor, surrounded by blood, believing her husband loved her. But the real story was just beginning. And this time, Rachel would write the ending. The sun set over the Vermont mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Inside the farmhouse, Emma played contentedly while Rachel made phone calls. To lawyers, to journalists, to other women Marcus had wronged over the years. Building an army, building a plan. building something strong enough to protect her daughter forever. Because that was what mothers did. They fought, they survived, and they never ever gave up. Rachel looked at her daughter one more time, memorizing the way the fading light caught her dark hair, the way her laugh sounded like music, the way her small hands reached for the fireflies dancing just out of reach. "I will protect you," Rachel whispered, "no matter what it takes." Then she turned back to her work. The war for their future was just beginning, and Rachel Morrison was ready. Rachel's story proves something that powerful people never want you to believe. The truth cannot be bought. It cannot be buried forever, and it cannot be silenced by money, lawyers, or fake psychiatric evaluations. But her victory was not just personal. Every woman who has ever been made to feel crazy for trusting her own eyes needed to hear this story. Every mother who has fought to protect her child against impossible odds needed to know that winning is possible. Every person who has been crushed by someone with more power and more resources needed proof that the system can work if you refuse to give up. Rachel did not just save herself. She created a roadmap for survival. Now here is where you come in. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Your single click tells the algorithm that stories like this matter, that truth matters, that women fighting back against powerful men deserve to be heard. Drop a comment below. Tell me which moment hit you hardest. Was it the Nike scene when Rachel pounded on the glass? Was it the betrayal by someone she thought was an ally? Was it the moment she finally stood up and said enough? Your comments create a community, a place where survivors can find each other, a place where people who are going through their own battles can discover they are not alone. Share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Not because you think they are in Rachel's situation, but because knowledge is protection. The more people understand how manipulation works, the harder it becomes for predators to succeed. And if you have not subscribed yet, join our family now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because next week we are bringing you another story that will challenge everything you think you know about trust, betrayal, and the price of fighting back. Remember this, you are stronger than the people who try to break you. You are smarter than those who underestimate you, and you are braver than you believe. Until next time, keep fighting for your truth. Final disclaimer. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful storytelling with real-life lessons. Every twist, every character, and every emotional beat was crafted to entertain, educate, and empower our audience. Thank you for trusting us with your time.